we are going to go through the muscles, the upper quadrant here. So basically muscles of the upper extremity. We're going to start with that big old muscle we first come across in our chest. Pectoralis major runs from the sternum, the clavicle, over to the humerus. Let me move that box. You can see it. The attachment point is there. Get our deltoid back here. There we go. Okay. As we come out laterally, you've run into the deltoid. Deltoid, you saw I had to select 3 different areas because you have the anterior head, medial, and posterior. It's all the same muscle, but you can just imagine their position. They're going to function really differently. If you have this start point to this end point getting shorter, it's going to do one thing, right? It's going to flex the shoulder. Whereas if you go to the back and you have this end point and this end point traveling towards one another, it's going to extend the shoulder. So they're very, very different in function, even though they're all the deltoid muscle. They come down and attach here on the lateral humerus. I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm going to get rid of the pec. Coming in even more deep is going to be pectoralis minor. So we have a second pec minor. You can see it's oriented just a little bit differently. It comes off of the ribs, and it attaches to a projection forward from the shoulder blade or the scapula called the coracoid process, which we'll see when we get a little bit deeper here. And then let's get more into the shoulder here. Okay, so we've taken off those big muscles that we can really visually see. If we have somebody that has good muscle definition, you can see the pecs, you can see the deltoids. Let's spin around to the back and find the rotator cuff. So there's 4 muscles that make up the rotator cuff. Our 4th one we're going to find right there. Okay, so let me show you all that again. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I did that wrong the first time. I got teres in there when I shouldn't have. So you have the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres, and subscapularis. Y'all don't need to know that. Just know it's called the rotator cuff. That is my biggest pet peeve. Rotator cuff. C-U-F-F. Not a rotator cup, not a rotary cup, or any variation thereof. Rotator cuff. It's a cuff that surrounds the humeral head and holds the shoulder in place. This large muscle here is the trapezius. It's similar to the deltoid in that it's one muscle, but it has 3 distinct zones, and they function quite differently. You've got the top, middle, and the lower. And it's because the upper trap, again, if you have your attachment points drawing inward, it's going to shrug your shoulders up. Middle trap through here is going to pull your shoulder blade in towards the midline of your back or retract the shoulder blade. And the lower trap down here is going to pull your shoulder down. So it's going to draw that depression of the shoulder. Okay. You can see a little bit better. Rotator cuff muscles there. We're going to find our rhomboids now. We have a major and a minor. Remember, attachment points. If those attachment points get closer to one another, that's going to help pull the shoulder blade inward. So it's going to squeeze those shoulder blades in, that cue that we give so much to get us out of a rounded position. Latissimus dorsi, we've talked about this several times before. Huge muscle, as you can see here. It wraps around to the front of the shoulder. Coming from this huge expanse on the back. Often tight for a lot of people, and it limits their overhead flexion of the shoulder, getting into a straight line in down dog, getting into a straight stacked joint handstand can be a big limiter for people that hold that tightness. Typically, if we're looking at kind of stereotypical movement patterns, more men than women will have tightness in their lats. I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's probably an activity preference thing, and oftentimes people that lift a lot of weights, which I hate dividing along gender lines, but used to be, at least we'll say, more men would lift weights than women, and that would lead to some lat tightness. Okay, serratus anterior, this is just an awesome muscle. It's called serratus anterior because it looks like a serrated knife. So think about a serrated knife that we use for bread or tomatoes or whatever, sitting on the ribs here. See where it comes posteriorly? So it's attaching into the shoulder blade. Oh, no, hang on. Come back. There we go. I got click happy. I'm going to see if I can hide this so you can see better. See, it attaches on the underside. Oh, for crying out loud. To the underside of the shoulder blade. So it pulls the shoulder blade this way, protraction. So if you're in plank pose and you try and push your chest away from the mat just a tiny bit more, serratus is going to be doing some of that work for you. Okay. Coming down the arm a little bit, we'll start on the front just because we're here. We're going to find the biceps brachii. There's two heads. This one right here, the long head, shoots up into the shoulder joint. So we oftentimes say that it kind of acts like a rotator cuff muscle. It also can become troublesome with poor form in chaturanga. We'll talk about that. Around to the back, we have the triceps. So triceps, three. There's three heads to it. It goes back of the shoulder, down to the elbow, extending that arm. As you come down into the forearm, we're getting down into, y'all remember, my favorite anatomy down here towards the hand, and all the muscles that act on the hand, actually, many of them originate on the forearm, so that it becomes needlessly fussy. You can see all of these individual muscles, and there's even more of them deep down. Just know that the ones on the front of the arm here flex the wrist or bend the palm towards the forearm. In mountain pose, they're bending it anteriorly. That's flexion of the wrist. And the ones on the back, all of this mess, extend the wrist. So they pull the back of the hand, the dorsum of the hand here, back towards the back of the lower arm, away from the front of the body if you're in mountain pose. Does that make sense? I'm not explaining wrist extension and flexion very well. Those are your muscles of the upper quadrant.